Yeah. Check 1 2. Check 1 2. All right. Back like we never left. What's up, everybody? Hi. You see me? You're tuned in for the pre-show. We'll get going soon. You know how we do. I have to make sure everything is working. I suspect that it might not be today because we had some issues setting up the pre-stream. But seems to be working. If you're wondering what this is all about, if you haven't been paying attention, this is the Hip Hop Can Save America. It says it right there. Podcast, the world's smartest hip hop podcast, baby. And what we talk about is the intersection of hip hop and different areas of society outside of just entertainment. Smart stuff, education, health and wellness, science and technology, politics and activism, spirituality. I could get another haircut, man. This pandemic hair grows fast. So if you're just tuning in, welcome. Come on, come into the room, have a seat, enjoy yourselves, pull up your lunch. It's about lunchtime for a lot of folks. 1 p.m. Eastern, live for the month of September. And that means we got about a week's worth of shows to go. We've done about 3 weeks of shows so far this month. It's a continuation of the podcast that already existed. And we're doing some cool stuff and having some really informative and inspiring, I think, conversations about how hip-hop can improve humanity and uplift society. So if you think that it's all... Shouts to SK, Silent Night on the check-in. And I can see you guys in the comments. If you comment in the comment section, you know, I see it. And I'd love to see it. So make sure you say hi and let me know that I look good, sound good, smell good, taste good, feel good, and that you are with us. I have one of my favoriteest people in this whole world, but certainly in the hip-hop world, coming on and joining us today. She has her feet in a couple of different areas that are of extreme importance to hip hop culture. I'm talking about top-notch intersections here. So she's going to be joining us in a few minutes. We'll start the main show, and then we'll get into talking with Sommer from the HipHopHacks organization. You see I'm wearing the shirt. And, of course, the Mixtape Museum. So, again, valuable contributions to hip-hop culture and more. We'll talk about that with her in a few minutes. So I'm just waiting for a few more people to trickle into the live, get settled, get their salads. What are y'all having for lunch? I may have a salad when I'm done, but I may not. A lot of work to put this show together. A lot of work. All right. Check 1 2. Once again, we're live until the end of the month, and then we'll be releasing more episodes throughout October. So the best thing to do is to subscribe as a podcast. You might be watching me on Facebook or YouTube, which is great. Subscribe there too, and smash that subscribe button on YouTube if you're watching or wherever you're subscribing. Get notified. But as a podcast, also either on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, it's the smart thing to do. So check that. What up, Jay Webb? Appreciate your support always, sir. Once again, shouts to Silent Night. And if you're out there in the watching, leave a comment. This system is supposed to bring in all the comments, and I'm supposed to see what everyone says. So we're going to get ready to start. Really cool guests coming today. So many good things happening here at Hip Hop Can Save America. So why don't we get it going? We'll start the official show. And I got a couple of things to tell you, which are actually really, really cool. Intersections of hip hop, dope stuff. And then at some point, Sommer will join us and we'll talk about some really good stuff. So there's a theme song, y'all. Y'all ready for it? I think you're ready for it.
The thing about hip hop today is it's smart. It's insightful. The way that they can communicate a complex message in a very short space is remarkable. And a lot of these kids, they're not going to be reading the New York Times. That's not how they're getting their information.
My hip-hop will rock and shock the nation. Hip-hop culture is more than music.
Peace to you and speak the truth. Show 'em what peace can do when they're reach for you.
My hip-hop will rock and shock the nation. Rap is something you do. Hip-hop is something you live.
So hip-hop didn't invent anything, but hip-hop reinvented everything.
Yes, indeed. Hip-hop reinvented everything. Shouts to Grandmaster Kaz for that incredible quote. It's your man, Manny Faces, welcoming you to another live episode of Hip Hop Can Save America, the podcast. But we're live, doing live streams on YouTube and Facebook visually for the month of September. We'll be reverting back to podcast only after that, and also in between. So if you follow us visually on YouTube or Facebook, then you might want to subscribe as a podcast. You'll get some extra bonus episodes, and then you'll get episodes after this stops at the end of September. May bring it back. We'll see. It's been quite a endeavor for me to put this all together. Very, very little help. I am luckily a genius, but special thanks to associate producers Cindy, who's been helping me out immensely, and also to the OG associate producer Sommer. Interesting. I see that the name of the guest is Sommer. I wonder if they're related. We'll find out in a few minutes. But thank you for checking in and checking me out live. We're going to have a fascinating conversation today. If it's your lunchtime, pull up, bring out your salad, whatever it is you're doing. Take a break, middle of the day. Just relax and learn about some real cool, innovative, informative, inspiring, surprising ways that hip-hop is helping to improve society and uplift humanity. That's what this show is about. That's what this podcast is about. That's what the organization is about. That's what my work as a journalist is about. My name is Manny Faces. I've been doing this for quite some time. I'm really honored and privileged to be able to have a platform where I can help tell some of the stories of these fine people doing fine things. If you're in the comment section of wherever you're watching me, say hi, just so I know that the system's working. I can see the comments as they come in. They kind of get consolidated from all the different platforms into one little box. So I love to say hi to people who are watching live. Speaking of live, if you are like I am, we are awaiting soon a grand jury decision on the Breonna Taylor case. So we know that traditionally those have gone a certain way, and we're going to wait and see what happens. So we're watching that live. I'm keeping an eye on that as well. If you're watching me and you're not watching that situation live, I'll tell you what happens when it happens, because I appreciate you being here with me. That being said, we've talked about the intersection of hip hop and social justice in the past. We've talked about that in terms of how hip hop has always been this voice of the underheard, or less heard. We talked about the Newsbeat podcast, which is a sponsor of this podcast, that intersects hip hop and social justice through journalism, through arts, all these things. So we know that hip hop is still a powerful voice, even though we lament sometimes that the voices aren't on the radio as much as we might want them to be. So let's think about that and look back at some of the episodes that we've talked about hip hop and social justice here. There will be more. I have not given up on hip hop's role as a valuable tool for the fight for social justice. Two things I want to tell you about as we get ready to talk to Sommer, who's arriving in the green room, as it were. And she'll be talking to us about some really great contributions she makes to hip hop culture in just a second. Two things to point out. Last night I attended the online gala, or gala. I'm not sure how it's pronounced. I've heard it pronounced both ways at the event, so who knows? The gala for the Hip Hop Public Health. And if you remember, Hip Hop Public Health was the subject of an episode during this September run with Lori Rose Benson, the CEO and executive director of the organization Hip Hop Public Health. And what they do is they build health equity through the transformative power of music, art, and science, with a heavy focus on hip hop. They had their yearly gala. It's a nonprofit, so it's one of these kind of gatherings of donors and honorees, hosted by Dougie Fresh. That was pretty cool. They gave an award to Cheryl Salt James of Salt and Pepper, who contributed an original song for this organization. The organization likes to use music and hip hop to especially teach young people about better health behaviors, something that's super vital right now. It was super important. It is an example of literally how hip hop saves lives. Oh no, you're not supposed to see the guest, but Bad me. So I do want you to go back and check out this episode, Improving Public Health with Hip Hop, with Lori Rose Benson from the Hip Hop Public Health Organization. Again, their gala last night was great. DMC from Run DMC, who's a sort of a featured artist that works with them, is there. Chuck D checked in. They do a lot of work in the communities that don't get enough attention from public health, organizations, I guess. And as we know, as COVID has hit, as we talked about social justice issues, COVID and coronavirus pandemic has obviously hit communities harder than others. So I respect the work of the Hip Hop Public Health Organization and ask that you double check that episode. Also, here's something cool. A bunch of episodes ago, I spoke to a fusion group that blends bluegrass music with hip hop, and they sprinkle in social justice. Now, all these things don't seem like they should make sense together. But when we did the episode and you heard the interview, you found out that it does, or it can. And that's what Gangsta Grass does. I want to shout out to Gangsta Grass. After several months after our interview, a couple months, they were previewing the album that just dropped. And that album is now the #1 album on the Billboard Bluegrass chart. So understand what that means. The #1 bluegrass album on Billboard is a rap album. It's hard to comprehend. Wrap your head around it. Go check out the interview with Gangsta Grass. It's on this podcast feed. You can go back and find it. And once again, I do encourage you guys to subscribe to this as a podcast. You'll understand when you hear the interview how those things mix. And what I love about not just having rap on there, and we've seen some intersections of hip hop and other genres, and sometimes they fail spectacularly. This doesn't. And again, being able to sprinkle in social justice is the most important thing. So check out that. Shouts to them. Congratulations on their #1 bluegrass album. Got a bunch of rappers on it. I love it. All right. So that's it. That's what I wanted to tell you about. Let's now get going. Let's get to the get down. Let's do the thing. Are we ready? Oh, I love it. The construction just started. Man, listen. All right. I'm going to try to manage this whole situation, but this is live. What can you do? You can't do anything. You got to live with it. I hope it doesn't sound too bad for y'all. I want to welcome my incredible guest, the amazing Sommer from HipHopHacks, the Mixtape Museum, and from all the things. Hello, Sommer.
Hi.
How are you today?
Better now that I'm here with you.
You're so sweet. What a charmer. I said in the intro, you're one of my favorite people in the world, and you know that, and I appreciate you for you. Thank you. But I also obviously appreciate you for all the things you do to do for the culture of hip hop. Why we're here, why we have talks 1,000 times a year, why we work together on projects, and why we boost each other up, or at least you boost me up. You're a mentor and an inspiration to me. So now that I've filled your head up, yeah,
really nice shirt.
You like that shirt? I'm always
an original, an exclusive.
Yeah. HipHopHacks. Limited edition. Yeah, I got 2 of them somehow.
You're welcome.
Sommer, thank you for joining me. I know you don't have a whole lot of time today, but you do a whole lot of things. So let's kind of get into it. One of the things that let's start with what I think you've been involved with. The main thing you do is so many things, and I don't want to ask you to tell people what you do because you'll be talking forever. We're here to talk about 2 main things: the Mixtape Museum, the HipHopHacks organization, and of course, I did nod, tip my hat to the fact that you're also an associate producer of this podcast. So you do some things. Explain to me your history with mixtapes and what you do to kind of advocate for the cultural importance of mixtape history, archiving, and appreciation.
Well, thank you for having me first.
You would have been number 1, but you didn't want to come on first. It's fine.
My history with mixtapes started in my bedroom, probably like a bunch of people, making tapes off the radio, recording from other people. And when I ended up going into the music industry and working as a music manager with hip hop artists that needed a mixtape to help us put music out because we were legally bound, the mixtape saved us.
Right.
So professionally, that's when I started getting involved with mixtapes. I was working with the Clips as my cousin's assistant. Shout out to Jeezy. And then later I was booking the majority of their tours, and working a lot with Star Trek, which was Pharrell's label, where, you know, the Clips were on at that time. And in that, doing that, is when I met Justo Faison, who was the founder of the Justo Mixtape Awards.
Yes, indeed. Rest in peace.
And he actually helped me distribute the Clips' first mixtape in the street. Like, we jumped in his Navigator and drove around. We went to all the spots. We went to all the mixtape spots.
Like guerrilla distribution, right?
Absolutely. Because we worked with mixunit.com at the time, it was owned by Clinton Sparks, DJ Clinton Sparks, and Mike Rios. Shout out to them. That website was real heavy when it came to mixtapes. That's where you went to buy a cover and get a mixtape for free, right? Because buying mixtapes is illegal, right? But they had distribution for all mixtapes at that time on lock, CDs. I'm not talking about cassettes.
Right.
And our distribution was with them. Clinton Sparks hosted the mixtape. So our online distro was great. But I had boxes of tapes, CD,
right,
tapes, in my house, and I didn't know what to do with them. And Nancy Byron, who was a publicist at the time for Who Kid, and probably Chamillionaire and a few other Texas people, was like, you need to meet Justo. And that's how I met Justo, and he helped distribute that tape. And then we proceeded to put out like other tapes, and it got us our next deal, extended our tour. So unfortunately, Justo passed away not too far after that. And the Mixtape Museum really was my tribute to him, because he taught me so much about mixtapes that I didn't know. Like, I grew up on 14th Street in Manhattan, always went, on the West Side to get tapes or whatever, or like Canal Street, right? But I didn't really understand how big the mixtape industry was, and also like how I would need it, how we would need it, how the Clips would need it. And
just shouts to Justo. Some people may be familiar, if you have some of the Mixtape Awards, where tribute was given to some of the better, there's an award show for mixtape
innovative mixtape DJs that were really, what mixtape DJs were doing, revolutionary, created their own distributions, for promotional use only, right? Like, they were the ones that the labels went to promote and get them vinyl. What Justo did was, when the labels hired him to promote a record, he targeted the mixtape DJs, because he knew that the mixtapes were making major moves for like a lot of different artists, DJs, and labels. Like, we moved from just DJ hosted mix by that point, right? We're talking about Diddy, 50 Cent, that whole G Unit camp, like how they changed the format of mixtapes, and now you had what we called kind of like street albums. So yeah, I think
I give a little credit to Flex for that. I think
there's a Justo Mixtape Award.
Oh wow,
that's a later one.
I was just starting out as a bedroom producer. I was making remixes. I'd always been doing production work, and I might put together a mixtape at the time. I just I had the little CD copier machine, the dub machine, and I was putting out a couple mixtapes, and I always wanted to have a Justo, man. So respect to that whole legacy. It changed it created an industry, right? Because a lot of money being made through mixtape. All the big DJs you see today on the radio, and that are on iHeart, and all these cats, they all kind of had the mixtape game on lock. That's how they got their come up, in the industry. And then parlayed that into actual industry jobs very often, and et cetera, et cetera. Before the CD, era, mixtapes were on cassette, the tape part of mixtapes. And I think it was a valuable way that hip hop itself was able to propagate throughout the world. Can you speak to just a little bit about how important mixtapes were to actually hip hop?
I mean, not even just for hip hop, right? Like,
true.
If you look at the timeline of like when the cassette came out and the boombox came out, and then also when cassettes were made available to the general public to purchase, like in stores, there was a bunch of different things happening in different genres of music. So the cassette undoubtedly was responsible for helping to shape a lot of music, but for hip hop especially, the cassette was responsible for recording some of the earliest moments of hip hop. So we're talking about park jams,
right?
Clubs, live concerts,
battles,
people recording, artists who we know now recording in their bedrooms, where you have exclusive records that we've never heard,
right?
And then the fact that you could dub it, like you could copy it,
right?
And it was small, you can stick it in your pocket,
right?
You
don't have to carry an album around,
and that's how a lot. Right, exactly.
So,
like I said, it was a big deal. And
there were even some like bootleg albums being made, of sort of, they would make them onto vinyl, but when the cassette came, it did change because it was so portable, it was so easily copyable. You have reel-to-reels, things like that. And then of course, that's how you could copy, and people would come up to New York where hip hop was bubbling from other areas of the country, cop a dub, and then bring it back, and now you're pollinating different areas. That must have been that's how it happened. Yeah.
My family's from Virginia, so we always talk about how a lot of those tapes made it down south on those runs.
Yeah. What kind of runs we talking about? Right. So but no.
So yeah.
But that's it. And I think military also, right?
Absolutely.
Explain that. That's the worldwide distribution, right? That's how.
Yeah, you had services like Mixtape Kings, and there's another one. Tape Master would know all these names. Shout out to Tape Master, Mixtape Historian, Mixtape Librarian. He just knows everything. There were services that were servicing service people on ships, and that's how they were getting their entertainment. Tape Master and I talk about also people who have been locked up, who were locked up around that time, and who come out and they're frozen in time and they're stuck with those tapes. And I think that's just such an important tape time capsule, right? It kind of, when you put on an old tape, it just kind of takes you back to that moment. If you made the tape, or if it's a tape that you heard, like I can think of different intros from different DJs. And when I hear it, I'm like, I remember when I got my first mixtape was a Ron G mixtape, and it was, you know what I mean? So it's those memories that it triggers, which is why we are also collecting a lot of mixtape memories from various different people, not just DJs or hip hop artists, but just trying to get a full picture of the mixtape experience. You got to get it from everybody,
Right. And again, and we've talked about this, and I've talked about this with other people, how important it is that the pioneers, the ones who kind of created this whole thing, a lot of them are around, they're but not forever, but they're around, and we can get their stories and get their again, innovators, pure, hacking the whole industry and changing the whole game. What are the plans for the Mixtape Museum? What have you done so far to kind of help document some of these things, and just some of the plans, near future, long term?
Oh, there's a lot, and it's all very exciting. One of the first things that we did was connect with collectors from all over the world to locate who had tapes from certain areas, especially like the New York City area. We're not just focusing on New York, like the Mixtape Museum hopefully will gather mixtape data and stories from everywhere. Right. But because I am in New York, and that was my entry point into this world, I'm starting with hip hop. So a lot of the hip hop mixtape DJs from the New York City area or tri-state area, those tapes made it all over the place. And I mean like continents away.
Right.
So I have created a group of collectors and just historians called the Mixtape Collective that come together every so often to like talk about these things, and talk about how to plan to start archiving and collecting stories from everyone.
Right.
The other part, which takes a little longer, is starting to digitize and create collections. Not just the Mixtape Museum's main collection, but
Right.
personal collections with some of these DJs. I had a recent conversation with Sarita Gates, and we were talking about how, you know, an archive is your wealth, whether it's your family archive or a DJ archive, or even now we're seeing company archives, right? Because now there's no programming. So now we're companies digging for content. They're digging in their archive, and you know, remixing that information. So even during COVID, I've had a few DJs who have dug up some gems while they've been home.
Right. Right.
And it's in the works. But I will say that some of these tapes go as early as like Bam and Kool Herc.
Right.
So one of the things we're hoping to do is to create a collection around the tapes that were found and around this DJ and how they got them, the stories behind that.
Yeah.
So to empower DJs to have archives, but also to help themselves to create their own archives, understanding why it's important. DJs, producers, engineers, you all are natural born archivists and technologists and catalogers and all of these things. When Cornell's Hip Hop Archive acquired Africa Bambaata's 41,000 piece vinyl collection, he had his own archival system that he just wrote with like a pencil.
Right.
But it was clear, like for his duplicates, for this, for that, like it was amazing. It was phenomenal. So empowering DJs to also be involved in the process of archiving, whether that's cataloging in a spreadsheet or you're in the studio all the time, working with the archivist to learn the archival standards so that you can start archiving your own things, not just for people to listen, but to stabilize it for long-term preservation. That it's two separate things. Just MP4 and then, you know, preserving something for long term. So around that, like there's some programming in the works to potentially work with DJs to create residency programs and fellowship programs to give them the resources to work on what they want to work on.
Is this standard?
It's in the works.
Is it? I was just gonna say this is kind of standard procedure for archiving things. We're just now applying it to an area that hasn't gotten the attention or the focus.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I personally am not a trained archivist. So I am learning the standards from all of my archivist friends and reading books and you know, being a part of archival groups and whatnot. But yeah, it's a process. Like you get the archive, and a lot of times if you don't have the money to process it, it just sits there.
Right.
You know, so larger archives that are at large institutions that have collections, a lot of the times they're sitting there unless someone really cares to go and look for money.
Right.
And I don't want that to happen here. So
no, it's valuable.
You know,
Again,
we're not working
these
big.
are
I'm not a
narratives.
huge institution. I'm
Right.
one person, but it's just starting from small. And then the idea of helping DJs help themselves and just other people who are archiving hip hop, right? And archiving mixtape related history. If they can help in the process, then we could speed it up. And we could also have a more dynamic view of, you know, mixtape history. So
no, you point out why. We point out why that history is so valuable, and still continues to be. You know, it's still a part of the culture, still a part of the music industry. It's still a part of.
I mean, people are still making mixtapes. I mean, they're not on cassette.
Right.
I know a lot of mixtape purists are like, those are not mixtapes. Fine, whatever. But when things don't evolve, they disappear. It's a mixtape. It's just an evolved mixtape. Call it whatever you want. But I mean, this is the evolution of a mixtape.
Yeah. So we'll be looking out for those things. Anyone wants to get involved in this, we saw Dr. Raphael Travis on the check-in, wants to, holler at us about some ideas, or holler at you rather about, some ideas about curating, mixes, and again, we've talked about even the stuff that I do on the podcast tip, that it exists because it's uploaded to some place, but if that place goes away, what happens to my episodes, right? And we've talked about taking digital mixes and putting them in a repository that's safe for long-term investment, or archiving. So we know how important all this can be.
Yeah, the other part that I've been working on during COVID, even with my own personal collection, is starting to collect the data around mixtapes. So, cassette tape, right? Track listing, artists, DJ.
Right. The metadata.
Where are these artists from? What kind of tape was it? Metadata. I am really interested in looking at archive or collection data through data visualization. So in other words, if we had a collection that we thought was complete, right, it would be a controlled set of tapes.
Right.
And we got all of the metadata. What are the trends we would start to see, right? Where are artists coming from? How many times, for instance, did Jay-Z appear on mixtapes for DJs in the tri-state area, blah, blah, whatever. Like, it's all data, right? But we have to go back and retroactively collect it, which is fine. I'm a database manager by day. So I don't mind getting my hands dirty in a spreadsheet and in a database, But it's important because mixtapes have never really been acknowledged for breaking records. There's always been this stigma that mixtapes are, piracy, which I get it. You're not supposed to sell them, but for promotional use only is for promotional use only, and that's what DJs were doing.
Right.
And it's important, I think, with the data we can start to prove or show the impact that mixtape DJs really had on the current landscape of music.
Yeah, I think that's valuable. Again, the promulgation of hip hop throughout the world, which, as we point out to in this show all the time, that hip hop has found ways to improve humanity and uplift society, and if in not just here in America, even though the show looks at domestic issues, worldwide, that came from this emergence of a youth culture that's stronger and bigger and faster, stronger, wider than any other that I could think of in a long time. But also, again, change. I think and we could have this discussion later in another forum, but I think there's and I'm sure you'd agree that there's a very clear connect the dots between mixtapes and the Spotify. What leads to the breakup of the music industry, what leads to the music industry kind of falling apart, the Napster kind of days where it's the same thing as mixing. You're spreading music, again, piracy, sure, but people find a way to get around the industries and create their own. And that leads to the music industry having to, flip on its side and go streaming, and all these things are connected. So I think it's very, very valuable foundational information for that, to study that whole thing. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
And the Spotify's and all these streaming services, they need to pay their dues to mixtapes.
It's true.
If they only knew that the digitization of mixtapes would get them new content that no one has ever heard.
That's brilliant. That's actually an entire...
whoa, right? But the issue again is copyright, right?
Right.
We're streaming. We would be streaming music that is not ours. So you do have companies like Dubset Media, and some others that have created software that scans streams and pays out royalties. But the problem is, in order for a song to be picked up on, say, for instance, Shazam, right?
Right.
You have to have the sounds in the database already.
Right. Right. So, it's like a DNA evidence. It has to be.
Yeah, exactly. And with mixtapes, as you know, what DJs do with mixing, your DJ, producers do with mixing and scratching, some songs don't even sound the same. You know what I mean? Like, it's a complicated situation. in terms of like getting the music out to people once these tapes are digitized. But it's still important to rescue the tapes now.
Right.
For some of them are 30 and 40 years old. They're suffering from sticky shed. You're not, they have to be saved. Yeah. We can figure out the other part later. Yeah. Like, let's find them now. So yeah.
That's what's up. Well, and that's a nice segue, because that all has to do with technology, finding ways to digitize and keep for long-term safety. And that's a technological process. You do some things that have to do with technology also, besides being a database engineer, administrator, database behind the scenes.
I'm a manager, not an engineer. But I mean, if you could get me up to another pay grade, I'm down.
Same thing? I don't know. Yeah, right. I'm sure you know the difference. You're like, no, I know what I get paid to do, and it's not that. So I got you. Let's talk about, again, just truly, utterly one of my favorite things, one of my favorite organizations or initiatives, as I think you like to call it, HipHopHacks. HipHopHacks I've talked about in a number of different places. I've written about, I've participated in. I'll just say very openly, and then you'll fill in some of the gaps. HipHopHacks as an initiative likes to look at ways to bridge folks to technology through hip hop. That can happen in a myriad ways. Explain, if you could, briefly what HipHopHacks is about, how it started, and some of the things that it does.
Yes. Oh my gosh, HipHopHacks, so amazing.
It's the best thing ever.
Gosh, shout out to Tiffany Nurse and Anthony Morgan and you and all the other people that helped organize the first one in 2016. It was at Spotify.
Yep.
For 2 days, April 2nd and April 3rd. We planned it for 150 students, but 600 showed up. And Spotify let us rock. Everything was safe, and it was an amazing event. How it came to be is when I started, I'm gonna just jump back a little bit just for some context. After working with the Clips, I started working in academia. And that kind of got me into working in becoming a database manager. I wanted to learn database work and code SQL so I could build a database to organize mixtapes. That's really why I learned it, turned into a job.
All comes back to mixtapes.
But once I got into database work, people were like, oh, you're in STEM. I'm like, I am. And I'm like, well, damn it, I am. So I started volunteering with the organization called All Star Code. They work with young men of color that want to go into the tech industry. And I would, on Saturdays, volunteer at hackathons. And a hackathon is an event where you have a bunch of, at the time, students. Some of them are coders, some of them are artists, some of them are undecided. They come together, they work on a project. Sometimes hackathons have themes. They present it, somebody wins, yay. So I was at a hackathon one Saturday, and they knew at the time, like I was, they were like, oh, Sommer, you work with Pusha T. Like, they don't know who the Clips are, right?
Right. They know the solo artist, yeah.
But they started like
King Push.
Right, exactly. They started rapping about their projects over lunch. Like they got into a full cipher, pizza in hand, and started freestyling. And I was like, what is happening?
Right.
And of course they're like, pay attention, Sommer, you da-da-da-da. So I was like, I'm paying attention. And I was just like, this is insane.
Right.
Like my worlds are like colliding as, like in front of me. So after that, I was like, yo, let's just plan a hip hop hackathon. And I didn't know what it was going to be or what it was going to look like.
Right.
We just planned it. And essentially we said, okay, let's plan a track of music and hip hop related workshops, and then also tech related workshops. So you led an amazing Cash Rules Everything Around Me workshop, which was kind of a mixture of technology and like journalism and the humanities. So HipHopHacks it also brings in like the humanity side of it. We have Beat Bang Theory, which was a workshop all on the history of beats, but they also got to learn how to build apps and build websites and DJ Neil Armstrong did the first DJ workshop where they
That's
learned
right.
how to DJ, and Mike Peterson was there. It was amazing.
It was a mental health aspect as well that was touched
For the
upon.
second Hip Hop Hacks, we had Oxymorons and Keith White and a few other people come out and do hip hop social media and mental health.
Yeah.
Which
So
actually,
no, I was gonna say, so it sounds like several years ago, you were doing things that had to do with increasing access to STEM fields for young people of color. You had things that focused on mental health awareness. You had things that talked about equity in the field, in diversity, inclusivity, and belonging. Sounds like everything that today people are like, you know what we need.
yeah, totally.
And
it is.
yeah. So one of my favorite workshops, I'm not sure if it was for this one. I have a friend, and I've mentioned this earlier in this series, but I have a friend who's a trauma surgeon, ER guy, you know, brilliant kid. I've known him since I was like 7, and he's a tech kind of guy. I mean, he just has no connection to hip hop. He's not a hater. He's not a racist. That's not his thing. And we talk about things sometimes, although he can recite the words to Paul Revere, I think, which he learned like 30 years ago, and probably never listened to another rap song since, because still, anyway, I digress. And he's a tech guy. We've done nerdy things together in the past, and I've told him, hey, about these hip hop hackathons. And he's like, I know hip hop and I know hackathons. I don't see how they can come together. And I think that we have a couple of examples. Obviously, the Python MC, partnership that we worked on with Richard Ashe from Google, which teaches computer programming by building beats and loops on top of each other and layering things, but you got to program it all in. So you got to learn how these basics of computer programming. It introduces young people to computer coding, something that they're very often not exposed to in their schools, because schools are underfunded and not really trying to teach, computer science and these kind of STEM fields early on. And that was one example. The other example that I love to point to, I forget who did this, but it was they were charged with making a musical instrument, a digital musical instrument out of sort of inanimate objects. And there was like a pizza box, aluminum foil squares, some wires, a Raspberry Pi, and a laptop. And this guy showed all these kids, and they made a drum machine in like 20 minutes. Yeah. Out of aluminum. It's amazing.
Yeah. Even simpler than all of that is a lot of these students identify as hip hop artists or producers, or they want to be a DJ.
Right.
I mean, like, at the end of the first Hip Hop Hacks, like we were like, yeah, we're going to have a finale. We didn't do like prizes like that. We had a raffle. We had Microsoft giving out Xboxes and like other stuff or whatever.
I did the raffle. I did not get an Xbox, but I tried.
You just got 2 shirts.
Yeah, that's true. 2 shirts.
But it was amazing at the end to see all of the students come together. So not just the rappers, but also like the technologists, and like you'd have someone showing their mapping project with someone like rapping, like freestyling. It was so amazing, and it just happened so naturally.
What does this do? What did you see? You talked to some of the students, you talked to some of the practitioners, anecdotes that you might have picked up. How valuable is this idea generally? I think HipHopHacks does it fantastic. Obviously, I'm biased. I've mentored. I've worked with you guys, but it's just done right. I think it's the gold standard. But from a general sense, what does this do to these young folks when they get the opportunity to have their kind of eyes just opened?
I mean, we had one student the first year, and I didn't find out about this for a couple years after, but she took DJ. I don't even know if Neil Armstrong knows this, but she took Neil Armstrong's workshop and went out after and went to DJ school.
Yeah.
Like, and was able to, like, she's a DJ, There were other students. We had the Make School sponsor the first year, and the Make School offers classes in technology things and coding and whatnot. They gave scholarships to some of our students.
Right. It's sort of like trade school, but for computer programming.
Like tech companies.
You said again, you got choppy there. Say that part. You got choppy on your internet. Say that last part again, just so people understand.
the Make School, which was a sponsor of the first HipHopHacks, they are a coding school. They gave scholarships to 3 of the students. And later I found out that 2 of those students actually finished and they have jobs. Like, and I was just like, what? I wasn't thinking about all of that when it first happened. When we first started it, it was just like, I'm going to organize this event with my mentees, and there's hip hop and coding, and that's what they love.
Right.
I wasn't even thinking about
more like atmospherically, like, let's bring them together and have a good time, and but these real connections between these, like a real bridge between these two.
Yeah, and
worlds.
also like the power of mentorship. The first one was planned for high school students. But naturally we had other people. We worked with monthly music hackathon at the time, and we had some of their constituents come in who are a little older. So it was really interesting to see the mentorship that happened from people who have experience in music ed or music tech or in coding to help these young people, or even some younger people helping older people.
It's true.
And I think just also for the hip hop community, the people that we have come to lead the workshops. I mean, these are people that are my friends, people like you. I mean, at one event we had, like Breakbeat Lou and Hank Shockley, like have a reunion.
Right. That's
like
true,
that's pretty monumental, right? Like that's like a big deal. So it ended up being like a mini conference in a way. Since then, it's taken on different shapes and forms. We've done individual workshops with Ralph McDaniels in the Queens Public Library. You came to this one. I worked with Richard Ashe from Google to do Carnegie Mellon and Google in Pittsburgh, which was a different model, which I actually loved. So there's just really, I think to your point, what you said earlier is we plan based on demand. Like if someone's like, hey, Sommer, can you organize this? I'm like, maybe I can. Or like, if you're in Newark and you did the event with Python MC in the Newark Public Library.
Right.
So it's really based on need. And I think, we did one a month ago. Right. That was pretty amazing. And it was needed because students are home. Right.
And through the distance learning, it's just what's great about this intersection is that it's a way to learn valuable skills. Obviously, computer science, computer STEM related stuff is super important and not always taught. But it's also something that requires, I've talked to a couple of educators the last couple of days, and, the problem is that these things really lend themselves to being done in person. School itself, just, whether it's done right or wrong, it's kind of an in-person thing. So when you're finding ways to engage students in this distance learning environment, to find ways to do it that actually keep them engaged and excited, even though they're on a Zoom call, you know what I mean? And it was, again, one month ago, we did a very virtual hackathon, and it seemed to have been very successful. So because of these elements. Yeah. So COVID is kind of unpredictable. We don't know how it's going to, take us out of here this year. Are there any long-term bigger plans? I do encourage people that if this does interest you, if you just have always wondered about, if you're a teacher, an educator, you work for a company, you want to find ways to work with youth, work with important, educational ideas like STEM, like computer science. How do we do that? How can we bring the arts into it? It's, again, what you've been doing for 4 years now is exactly what everyone's trying to figure out how to do. So I think the blueprint is there. I do encourage people to get in touch for the hip hop hacks, specifically hiphopHacks.org is the site. And they can
hiphopHacks.com.
Is it com? I don't know. What do I know?
I think they all lead somewhere.
HipHopHacks.com.
On social media, I am Dear Sommer with the O on everything. Yeah. Mixtape Museum is Mixtape Museum on everything.
Yeah.
And HipHopHacks is kind of, sort of, but.
Well, you're Googleable, so we could get people there. You're Googleable. The organization is Googleable. You are Googleable, Sommer with no last name. And what we want people to do is reach out and consider these 2 areas that we've talked about today: the Mixtape Museum, the preservation of hip hop culture through this medium. the preservation of the actual physical things that, as you say, degrade over time, and the stories of the
Technology,
of the people that actually made them and had a part in that. That's important too. So anyone who's involved in that or pass this information along, let people know that the Mixtape Museum is definitely an organization you want to get in contact with. The same thing with HipHopHacks. Is there anything else, dear Sommer,
There's
that we
so
should
much. We could talk forever. We could talk forever.
that we need
do.
to let people know about, that you're into, that you're involved in, that they may want to contact
Yeah, there's
us?
some things. Swag for Stigma, which is a new nonprofit started by Oxymoron's member Dave, is an organization which I happily am an advisor for. Their focus is on Black people and people of color, and providing resources for mental health. Super important. Super important.
Swag for Stigma.
Swag for Stigma. I think their website is swagforstigma.org.
Yep, I got it up on the screen now for the peoples.
Yeah, very excited about that. Doing some committee work with ideas and for the Universal Hip Hop Museum, which is exciting.
Yep.
And also continuing to develop the Mixtape Museum. COVID has given me a lot of time to rethink and restructure and remix what the Mixtape Museum is going to be. It has actually given me time to do things. So for instance, planning, doing oral histories with DJs. Me and DJ, I keep putting DJ in front of his name. Sorry, Rich. Rich Nice.
Yes, shouts to Rich Nice.
Rich Nice is amazing. His bio starts with the first rapper signed to Motown. He's that cool. Yeah. He has been helping with the Mixtape Museum. He's a DJ, producer. He's the producer of Sway in the Morning, and has his own initiative called the A&R Room. And we've been working on collecting oral histories from people, very targeted ones, and prioritizing people. A lot of our pioneers are dying. Yeah. Like, it just kind of is what it is. We don't really have a ton of time.
Right.
So it's crucial to like do things. So COVID has just given me like a fire under my ass to like do it now. Like, why wait? So collecting those stories, collecting mixtape memories from people. If anyone is interested in submitting mixtape memories, there's a form on the Mixtape Museum website, or just hit me up personally. Right. So we're starting to collect the stories and collect the content, the things that we need to save, the stories that if they don't get collected, they're just not going to be heard.
Yeah.
And of course, hip hop can save America.
Well, that's part of it, Well, I appreciate that work. It's all valuable, noble work. Like I said in the beginning, not only are you just one of my favorite people, but the work you do is it's just so focused on hip hop culture, like the cultural aspect of it, that we try to focus on this show. You are the perfect ambassador for those things. So
thank you.
Good stuff.
Hoping for a surprise visit from Baby Girl Faces, but that's fine. Maybe another episode.
She's been, since I've started doing these, I still DJ the brunch on Bonfire Radio on Sundays at noon. She makes an appearance there. On these, she's tended to, these seem more, more formal, and she doesn't want to.
Not interested.
It's probably, yeah. If she was, she wouldn't care. She'd be like, "Look, I'm showing you my homework." But I will tell her you said hello. All right. So once again, the Mixtape Museum, mixtapemuseum.org or .com. Who knows? Mixtape Museum. HipHopHacks. That's the .org. HipHopHacks.com. Dear Sommer on Twitter and stuff. And
on everything.
On everything. Please.
Don't worry. I'll stalk the social media feeds and put my links in.
Yeah, no, like you're the one sometimes putting the links in. So I had to do it because you weren't doing it. Which you don't even have to do. You're not even supposed to do it. What are you doing in the first place?
I mean, these lives have been so amazing. And, as I'm watching and like doing stuff in my house, I'm like, wait, I want to hear more about that. So the things that I want to like look up, I'm like, other people have to want to find this stuff.
Yes.
So let me just drop the link in there. So
it's valuable feedback to what's needed if I were to ever do this crazy madness again, which maybe I will.
Maybe you will.
In the meantime, thank you for all your support with this show. Obviously, you've been, again, you're the OG associate producer, helping this show actually exist.
Shout out to Cindy. I just met Cindy for the first time. Shout out to her.
I said there's going to be some associate producer on associate producer violence in the green room. It's going to be a big fight.
Love. All love.
It is all love. She's amazing. So now, you know, it's I can't do it alone. I value your assistance and your help and your mentorship, your leadership, not just like, you know, help, but really inspiring myself and so many others. So anything you do, you know, I will amplify and signal boost on your behalf. And I really hope that we get to be in the same place at the same time without being infected at some time soon. That'd be awesome. All right, Sommer, I'll let you go.
Thank you.
You can hang out and watch the end if you want, but you can just, you know, do whatever you want. Sommer, thank you so much.
Bye.
I know you got 1,000 things. The wonderful Sommer. Again, Mixtape Museum, HipHopHacks, so many other things. Just an exemplary figure in this whole ways that hip hop can help humanity thing. Please do follow her endeavors. Again, you can find them wherever you find things. Mixtape Museum and HipHopHacks. There will be new adventures spawning from both of those organizations soon. And of course, if you want to find out more about some of the things that we talked about in this episode, not only are they on those sites, but we've talked about them here on this podcast before. We have had Richard Ashe from Google, that was the creator of the Python MC, which is now called Breakbeat Code, I think. I hope I got that right. But anyway, that system has been used to teach young people how to the intro to computer science, to coding. Coding in Python. I've seen it work. I've facilitated some workshops. I've seen it happen live. I've seen young people sit through a 4-hour workshop and emerge, like pay attention the whole damn time, and then emerge with a better understanding of how to get into computer science, coding and programming, something that they've never probably had very much access to before these programs have opened their eyes. That's the greatest thing about HipHopHacks. That's the great thing about the intersection between hip hop and these other areas, science and technology. I hope we gave some insight to how these things can work. And if you are, again, who is this show for? Well, it's for hip hop heads that love to see their culture being used in great ways. But I think a lot of people who are sort of education minded or civically engaged or trying to find ways to merge the arts with charitable issues, you know, we talked about. There are ways to take whatever you do, add some hip hop into the mix authentically and with thought and with care, and you can improve that thing you do, right? That's what I want to come out of this show, because we have this wide array of guests that are coming from all aspects. We talk journalism, public health, the fine arts, social justice, education space, left and right, mental health, counseling, all of these aspects of humanity. And I'm showing you ways that hip hop is not just like in the mix, but is doing things in a way that's unique to hip hop, that hip hop is uniquely qualified to do. And out of that comes an improved lives, improved livelihoods, and improved communities where it didn't exist before. So if I'm telling you that there's a large group of young people in the world that had no exposure or very limited exposure to computer programming, coding, computer science, robotics, social media, but not from the usage point, from the app design. Young people had no access to. They don't teach a lot of this stuff in school. They may come from underfunded schools that don't even have a lot of, you know, investment in the STEM program. If I'm telling you that all those young people, there's a great many of them now, didn't have that access, then they came to a HipHopHacks event, and now they have that. And that some of them have gone ahead and, as we heard, had scholarships, given to them by some of the sponsors at that event. That wasn't there before. That was there because of hip hop, and that wouldn't have been there if it wasn't for hip hop. That's what I'm trying to get through to everybody with these shows. I don't care what you do. And it's not just about, oh, we're going to have some rappers. No, it's a mindset. It's an ethos. It's an approach. It's not theoretical. It's been done in so many different areas. We got the receipts. We're showing you how it can be applied to mainly help young people, but also help older people. We've talked about how it helps juveniles going through the criminal justice system. We talk about how it helps grown folk relate to to young people in a different way. There's so many ways, so many aspects of society. We'll continue exploring this for the rest of September live, 1 p.m. Eastern, here wherever you're watching me. And then available as a podcast episode. So do subscribe to the podcast. You can go to hiphopcansaveamerica.com, or you can just put in Hip Hop Can Save America on whatever podcast app you use, and you will subscribe, get updates, additional bonus episodes through the podcast tip. So make sure you do that. And once again, thanks to Newsbeat, the social justice podcast, the award-winning, best journalism podcast, says New York Journalism Society, the New York Press Club. Best journalism podcast of the year. And it's got rappers in it, beating out the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal. So shouts to Newsbeat, that podcast that tackles social justice issues. We see that there's now news in the Breonna Taylor case. One of the 3 officers has been indicted. 3 counts of first-degree wanton endangerment, which doesn't sound very serious, which I guess we expected. So we'll follow up on that as well. Newsbeat tackles a lot of these issues, and it's a place you can go to get some understanding about. We just talked about voter suppression on Newsbeat. So there's some things to learn from that podcast. Funkadelic Studios, again, rehearsal, recording space. And if you support this work, I got 2 new patrons this week. Thank you so much. I haven't checked with them if I could say their names or not, but there are people contributing to the Patreon account, patreon.com/Manny Faces. It's fantastic for me. It lets me know that there's interest. I see people tuning in. I love y'all. I see people tuning in regularly, getting the numbers. Great. When you're putting some money into the bank, it drives me even harder to do these things. It pays for the Zoom subscriptions. It pays for the Restream subscriptions. It pays for some of the equipment and all the things that we got to do, the assistance, to make sure that this comes off as flawlessly as possible. So I thank you for that. And that will, I don't take that lightly. So thank you. And if anyone wants to become a patron, patreon.com/Manny Faces. Doesn't take much to do a lot. I will also be giving out some perks and some extra bonuses for patrons very shortly. So, and if you don't, that's fine too. I know how things are. It's perfectly fine with me. You can pay us forward by sharing this with someone who you love and who loves hip hop, and also share it with someone who doesn't. I think that it's super valuable that people who are not quite into hip hop, but might be into, I don't know, education or, just charitable works or just getting off the couch when it comes to social justice, just kind of realizing that I got to do some things. And I think that the intersections that we talk about on this show are very much very much attached to a social justice, betterment of humanity, equality and equity kind of thing. So like I said, that's very in vogue right now, but we've been doing it for quite some time. So spread this message, spread this love. I appreciate you. I'll be back tomorrow at noon, and then we're off until Monday with the lives, but I'll have a couple of bonus episodes, I think, by the weekend. I know I owe you a couple. We're kind of trickling out a little bit because, I'm tired, man. Been doing this for a month. Thanks. It's your man, Manny Faces. I appreciate you for checking me out. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, praise, or indictments, you can reach me on whatever platform you're looking at, or just Google me, Manny Faces. I'm very Googleable, and reach out to me in your preferred method. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Thank you for spreading the word. Thank you for becoming a patron. Thank you to Sommer. Again, the Mixtape Museum. Why can't you see her name anymore? I don't know what happened. Thank you to Sommer, Mixtape Museum, HipHopHacks, and just an awesome human being. One of my great friends, and I love her and I love y'all. So thanks.